Welcome to Afro Tales Hub channel. Have you ever wondered about the power of acceptance and true love? In our latest story, we bring you the tale of Princess Adanne, a young woman with a unique struggle, a persistent and unpleasant body odor. Will she ever find acceptance and love despite the challenges she faces? Join us as we delve into a world of enchantment, where the unexpected unfolds and hearts are touched. Get ready to be captivated by a story that will make you question the true meaning of beauty and the strength of the human spirit. Don't miss out. Listen until the end to discover the transformative journey of Princess Adanne in The Strong Body Odor Princess No Man Wants to Marry. Let's begin. Once upon a time, there was a small village encompassed by lush green hills and farms. In this quaint village resided Princess Adanne, whose father was King Chakmeka, the ruler of the village. Adanne, known for her kind and gentle nature, was the king's eldest daughter. She took great care of the villagers, but she faced a lifelong struggle, a persistent and unpleasant body odor that plagued her. Even in her early years, Adanne emitted a much stronger and unpleasant smell compared to other children. As she grew older, the odor intensified, leaving a pungent trail wherever she went. The villagers began treating Princess Adanne differently as she entered womanhood. They made efforts to keep their distance from her due to her overpowering stench. Some villagers would make unkind jokes and comments about her foul odor behind her back. Mothers, upon spotting Adanne on the dusty village road, would hastily usher their children inside their homes. The girls who were once Adanne's friends would purposefully avoid her, changing their direction to evade any interaction. This saddened Adanne greatly. Despite her beauty and royal status, many young men from the village and neighboring kingdoms desired to court Adanne. However, as soon as they came within 6 feet of her, they were repelled by her odor. They decided against pursuing her, disregarding her attractiveness and her position as the king's daughter. This left the princess feeling extraordinarily lonely. She rarely ventured out of the palace, spending most days secluded in her bedroom. From there, she would gaze out of her window, daydreaming about true love, a man who could accept her despite her unpleasant smell. Adanne envisioned a husband who would love her for her kind heart, seemingly an impossible dream that brought her to tears. On a scorching summer day, filled with life and vibrancy in the village, Princess Adanne found herself in her castle bedroom, fanning herself. Desperate for a breeze, she left her shutters open. Suddenly, lively sounds drifted up from the village square, joyful drumming and laughter. Intrigued, Adanne leaned out of her window and witnessed people dancing around a bonfire, celebrating the summer feast day. A flicker of excitement ignited within Adanne. She pondered the possibility of sneaking out of the palace unnoticed to observe the festivities. The people around were immersed in happiness and captivated by the lively dance. Seizing the opportunity, Princess Adanne discreetly left the palace, silently making her way to the outskirts of the village square. Unnoticed, she stood in the shadows, wistfully observing girls her age twirling energetically in their vibrant skirts. However, a breeze blew, carrying Adanne's unfortunate odor through the crowd. Wrinkling their noses, people searched for the source of the unpleasant smell. The drum beats ceased, and the dancing came to an abrupt halt as all eyes turned towards the solitary princess. Shocked expressions transformed into unpleasant sneers, and whispers filled the air as people pointed and doubled over, struggling to endure the stench. The carefree joy that permeated the square moments ago vanished, leaving Adanne filled with humiliation and shame. Tears welled up in her eyes as she ran away from the crowd, seeking refuge behind some bushes, hoping to remain unnoticed. Crouching down, trembling with embarrassment, Adanne desperately tried to hide behind a tree, praying that no one would discover her. In the distance, she heard the steady beat of a drum, gradually growing louder and approaching. Fearfully, she peered through the leaves to catch a glimpse of who was drawing near. To her surprise, a young man from a neighboring village appeared, wearing a beaming smile and cheerfully playing a hand drum. He walked directly towards her hiding spot, ceasing his drumming upon reaching her. With kindness, he asked why she had stopped dancing earlier, noting the joy and freedom she exuded while she moved. Odor was taken aback that this stranger had followed her all the way, especially considering his ability to detect her distinct scent. In disbelief, she replied, You can smell me, and yet you still came looking for me. Back in my village, everyone teases me and laughs at my dancing. The young man responded gently, assuring her, Don't worry about them. I think you're a wonderful dancer. Please ignore their unkind words and continue dancing with happiness and freedom. Adanne was astonished by the young man's compassionate words. She realized that he genuinely didn't care about her differences. Encouraged by his acceptance, she made the decision to disregard the cruel taunts of her neighbors and dance freely, just as she desired. The young man began playing a cheerful and lively rhythm on his hand drum. Initially hesitant, Adanne gradually swayed in sync with the music. The stranger's smile widened as he observed her movements. He increased the tempo of his drumming, playing faster, all while maintaining a warm gaze fixed upon Adanne. In that moment, Adanne sensed that he saw her for who she truly was, beyond her outward appearance, acknowledging her heart and soul. It was a feeling of complete acceptance, unlike anything she had experienced before. This realization liberated her spirit. She released her self-consciousness and gracefully began to dance, her body moving fluidly in elegant motions that left her breathless and filled with elation. As the drumming accelerated, Adanne's feet moved faster, and she effortlessly leaped and spun, weaving swift and intricate steps that came to her naturally. The rhythm seemed to flow through her, infusing her with joy and vitality. With the stranger's admiring gaze locked onto hers, she felt liberated to fully express her love for dance. When Princess Adanne eventually stopped dancing, she and the smiling stranger held each other's gaze for a moment. Adanne felt exhilarated from the joyful dancing and uplifted by the feeling of being truly seen and accepted by someone. Suddenly, they burst into laughter, connecting through their shared happiness. After catching their breath, the young man introduced himself as Adanne, sharing that he lived in a nearby village and played drums for events and celebrations in the square. Adanne asked Princess Adanne if she would meet him at the same spot in the bushes again tomorrow, expressing his desire to talk more and perhaps play the drums for her to dance once more. His warm smile and enthusiasm made it clear that he had thoroughly enjoyed their time together. Princess Adanne happily agreed, feeling her heart fuller and lighter than it had been in years. All her life, she had experienced rejection and loneliness due to her odor issues, but the stranger had accepted her and found delight in her dancing. Adanne hurried home, her head spinning with giddiness from the exhilarating experience of truly being seen. She was overjoyed at having found a genuine friend, and her heart swelled with optimism and excitement for their upcoming meeting behind the bushes. In the following weeks, Princess Adanne's meetings with Adanne became the highlight of her days. Each afternoon, she would eagerly sneak away to their secret spot in the bushes, where Adanne would already be waiting with his drums. The two newfound friends engaged in lively and lengthy conversations, sharing stories and jokes that had them laughing for hours. While they talked, Adanne often picked up his drumsticks and played energetic rhythms that delighted Princess Adanne and ignited her passion for dance. She let go of all self-consciousness regarding her lingering odor issues when she was around Adanne. He made her feel deeply accepted, allowing her to lose herself in the music. Her wild and uninhibited dancing enhanced their connection even further. Whenever Adanne twirled past Adanne, he looked at her with admiration for her spirit and beauty. Over the course of several weeks, their initial bond developed into a deep and trusting friendship, blossoming into warm affection felt by both. Princess Adanne found herself falling in love with Adanne, sensing his equal care for her in return. A part of her secretly ached due to the differences in their social status, he, a struggling commoner musician, and she, a sheltered royal with obligations to marry for political alliances. She assumed a future together was impossible, although she desperately wished in her most private dreams that their social standing wouldn't interfere and they could be united in marriage. With Adanne, she had never experienced such happiness and acceptance. During one afternoon, as Princess Adanne and Adanne sat closely, engrossed in their usual conversations and laughter, he reached over and gently took both of her hands in his. His expression shifted to a serious and emotive one as Adanne told Adanne about his deep feelings for her and his desire for them to be together forever. He proposed to her, expressing his wish for their two villages to be united through their union. Odor disregarded royal customs and permissions, driven only by the fact that being with Adanne made him genuinely happy, and he longed for a life built on love and connection. Princess Adanne was overwhelmed with surprised joy at his heartfelt proposal, shedding tears of happiness. She had yearned for nothing more than to be Odor's wife, even though she believed it could never come to fruition. Adanne felt unworthy of such a wonderful man who was willing to overcome social barriers to declare his unconditional love for her. In her excitement, she embraced Odor, whispering yes against his smiling lips as they shared a long, tender kiss. She had never imagined that such liberating love could be hers. When they finally pulled back, their faces flushed and beaming with giddy smiles, the lovers enthusiastically made plans, still riding high on the possibilities of their new journey together. The princess and the drummer boy agreed that they must share the wonderful news with both of their families without delay. They would first seek permission to marry from Adanne's parents, the king and queen, and then travel to Odor's village to gain his family's approval and blessings as well. As they set off hand in hand towards a future as husband and wife, their excitement was interrupted by immense tragedy. The villagers were struck by a deadly and rapidly spreading plague that devastated the countryside. The early symptoms manifested as a raging fever and the appearance of large boil-like blisters on the skin. Within days, those infected would succumb to violent fits of madness before falling into deathly stillness. It was a horrific and agonizing way to die. In a desperate attempt to contain the terrifying outbreak, leaders of the 4 neighboring villages made the difficult decision to completely seal off their borders. No one was allowed to travel between towns for any reason. Villagers who attempted to flee would be captured, quarantined, or even killed on sight by fearful guards. As the plague continued to ravage the land, residents of the villages lived in fear, hiding within their family homes and avoiding any interaction with potentially infected individuals. Friends and neighbors barricaded their doors and windows, only venturing out briefly for necessary supplies before retreating back into self-imposed isolation. For Princess Adanne, weeks of being cut off entirely from her beloved Odor turned into months, as she remained trapped within the palace while the plague circled hungrily outside. Her initial hopeful joy for a future with Odor faded into a daily fear for his safety, with no means of reaching him. The villagers remained frozen in their quarantine and isolation for endless months as the plague ran its course. Adanne and Odor could only pray that the other was still alive. Despite isolating herself within the royal palace, Princess Adanne eventually awoke feverish, with terrifying red boils spreading across her arms. The plague had reached her. Over the following days, her condition grew gravely worse as her body was consumed by severe fevers, soaking her dressing gown and bed sheets in constant sweat. The crushing fatigue from battling the illness left her too weak to even lift her head for sips of water. Seeing their eldest daughter suffer in such agony was agonizing for the king and queen. They desperately tried every traditional remedy and modern medicine offered by the royal doctor, from herbal baths to maggot poultices meant to draw out the disease. However, nothing seemed to alleviate Adanne's worsening condition. The situation became dire as the pale and motionless princess appeared to slip away before their eyes. In a moment of despair, the queen remembered an obscure tonic brewed by an old village woman when Adanne was a child. Though repulsed, she had the doctor mix a potion made of bitter roots and weak-souled animal blood. They gently spooned this revolting concoction into Adanne's mouth. Miraculously, just a day later, the princess finally showed signs of life. Over the next week, with round-the-clock care and the strange medicine, coupled with the queen's loving touch, Adanne slowly regained strength, inching back from the brink of death. Though still frail, Princess Adanne had survived the illness that had claimed the lives of many others. Overwhelmed with joy, Adanne's parents shed tears of gratitude as their daughter's fever finally broke and she managed her first steps. After several more days of rest and recovery, Princess Adanne felt strong enough to cautiously stand up from her sick bed. Still unsteady on her feet after being weak from the fever for so long, she shuffled slowly across the room, using the wall for support. Adanne made her way to the full-length mirror standing in the corner, anxiously peering at her reflection. In shock, she gasped aloud, barely recognizing herself. The vicious fever of the plague had tormented her body for days, but now her skin looked fresher and more supple than ever before. Turning to the side, she discovered with joy that, most incredibly, her chronic lifelong body odor had completely disappeared. The prolonged sweating during the fever must have somehow purged the smell entirely from her pores. Princess Adanne couldn't contain her ecstatic laughter, twirling around and inhaling her now sweet-scented skin in delighted disbelief. This remarkable cure felt like a miracle. Words couldn't express her euphoria at finally being free from the odor that had plagued and isolated her since childhood. Almost on the verge of tears from happiness, Adanne rushed excitedly to share the glorious news with her parents, the king and queen. She wanted everyone to know immediately that the infection, which had nearly taken her life, had instead brought astonishing new confidence and joy into her life. After several more months, the rampant plague began to die away, and the strict quarantines on the villages could finally be lifted. As Princess Adanne walked through the main gate of the castle for the first time in over a year, she held her breath nervously, still remembering the cruel reactions and insults she had faced in the past. However, to her amazement, no one shied away from her approach. Villagers paused their activities to admire her, praising her graceful bearing and glowing health. Some even stepped nearer, their eyes wide with admiration, entranced by her presence. The local young men, in particular, couldn't seem to take their eyes off her, their affection evident in their open-mouthed gazes. For the first time she could recall, Adanne moved through her kingdom feeling strong, confident, and truly accepted. The horrors of the plague, coupled with her cured odor and newfound confidence, had transformed her into a captivating figure that no one could ignore. Princess Adanne became a village belle, with everyone admiring her. Dizzy with the thrill of acceptance and admiration from the villagers she used to hide from, Adanne became caught up in self-pride over her cured odor and newfound beauty. In the midst of her excitement, she had nearly forgotten about her loyal love, Odor. However, as she walked through town, she spotted a familiar figure bounding eagerly down the road towards her. It was Odor, her dear friend, companion, and bridegroom-to-be whom she hadn't seen in over a year since the plague hit. Adanne's first eager impulse was to run straight into his arms with teary relief for his safety, but she caught herself short. Doubt surfaced, questioning whether she was now too elevated in status as a pampered royal to be with someone like Odor, a drummer boy without notable wealth or a prominent family name. Insecure thoughts swirled in her mind, and the princess composed her face into a formal distant mask before Odor could reach her. When Odor finally reached her, the drummer boy was grinning fit to burst, his desperate delight shining through as he exclaimed, "My princess, how I have missed basking in your beauty and radiance." He moved toward her, expecting a warm embrace. However, Odor stood reserved and still, making no move to welcome him back after their long separation. Odor joyfully stepped forward to hug Princess Adanne, so thankful to see his beloved betrothed again after agonizing months apart. But the princess sharply recoiled away from his opening arms, a look of deep surprise and hurt flashing across Odor's face at her rejection. Confused, he searched her now cold eyes questioningly. In sharp cutting tones, not like her warm voice of old, Adanne stated that she no longer wished to continue their relationship. She told him that after enduring the terrors of the plague and emerging more beautiful than ever, she now moved in different, higher social realms than a common boy like Odor ever could. Odor looked deeply hurt by Adanne's harsh words, his anguish evident on his face. "But Adanne, I love you," he protested passionately. "These months of silence only made me love you more. I'd do anything to make you my wife." Princess Adanne met his gaze with a fiery glare. "You will address me as Princess Adanne," she commanded coldly. "This conversation ends here. I deserve someone better than you." She spat out the words, feeling a cruel satisfaction in them. Without a backward glance or a pause to listen to his heartbroken cries, she walked away. Swiftly, she turned away, marching off with determination. She blocked out her inner anguish, shouting, her chin held high, masking the pain she felt inside. In Adanne's mind, she cut off their connection abruptly, closing that chapter of her life for good. Now, she had plenty of noble suitors vying for her attention. In the following months, the increasingly vain princess continued with court life, acting as though the humble drummer boy, Odor, had never touched her heart. She entertained extravagant marriage proposals from respected lords and princes, one after another. These influential men, who had once turned away from Adanne in disgust, shamelessly showered her with flattery, eager for the attention of the newly transformed princess. Adanne grinned as she soaked up their compliments about her flawless skin, graceful movements, and regal demeanor, praises that she could never have imagined receiving before. Despite the adoration, she couldn't shake the regret gnawing at her heart for pushing Odor away so harshly. As weeks passed, King Chukwa urged Princess Adanne to quickly choose a husband from the numerous suitors vying for her hand before rumors damaged her marriage prospects. Wanting all eyes on her, Adanne declared she would host a wrestling tournament where the kingdom's strongest men would compete for the chance to marry her. Upon hearing this, men of great strength traveled from far and wide, eager for the opportunity to win the hand of the renowned beauty. In the days leading up to the tournament, Adanne became obsessed with enhancing her appearance to outshine everyone. Her maid stylishly groomed her, but in her pursuit of outer perfection, Adanne neglected basic cleanliness, even foregoing regular baths. Slowly but surely, Adanne's old body odor returned. On the morning of the wrestling tournament, the weather was perfect, providing an ideal backdrop to showcase Princess Adanne's beauty. She entered the bustling arena adorned in shimmering silks and adorned with jewels, aiming to dazzle the crowd. As Adanne lifted her delicate hand to wave at the cheering crowd, the excitement suddenly changed. A surprised whisper spread quickly among the people, and they moved away in disgust, wrinkling their noses at the strong smell coming from the princess. Embarrassed men hid their faces, looking away to avoid eye contact. Princess Adanne felt deeply embarrassed when the tournament participants shook their heads and left, wanting to avoid her. The villagers watching the tournament also followed, talking quietly about her body odor and holding their noses in disgust. Adanne felt utterly crushed and ashamed. She quickly removed her fancy royal clothes and jewelry, dropping them in the dirt with tears in her eyes. She turned and ran away as fast as she could. As Adanne ran, her eyes landed on one person standing alone across the tournament grounds, Prince Arinza. He stood tall and straight, looking at her with kindness as she hurried away. After a moment, Arinza walked purposefully towards her, his face showing both concern and sadness for her distress. When Arinza reached Adanne, he spoke gently to her, "My dear precious one, how could you think so little of our love and what we meant to each other? Why would you give up our bond for the fleeting attention of others?" Tears rolled down Adanne's cheeks as she shook her head. "Please forgive me, Arinza. I made a terrible mistake thinking that looking beautiful on the outside was more important than our love. I was vain and careless, and now I've lost the most important thing in my life, your love and care. Thank you for listening. Hope to see you in the part 2.